So we're going to take a look at Joe Biden's speech on gun control he gave last night. And if you don't realize it, there is a all-out blitz to hurry up and get this done because they don't want people to stop and think about it. And they started this, they've been doing this, but Uvalde made them think that, oh yeah, we can get it done now. Because it's horrible. 19 dead children, absolutely horrible. But then details started coming out about Uvalde. And that actually completely undermined their arguments. But these unscrupulous politicians are never ones to let facts get in the way of their agenda. They're never the ones to let the truth get in the way of their objectives. They're never the ones to allow reality to interfere with their ambitions. So they kept pushing forward. They are still pushing forward, and they're ignoring all the facts that completely undermine everything they're saying and going forward with this blitz. So let's take a look at Joe Biden's speech from last night, and we'll talk about it after.
This past Monday, Jill and I visited Arlington National Cemetery. As we entered those hallowed grounds, we saw rows and rows of crosses among the rows of headstones with other emblems of belief, honoring those who paid the ultimate price on battlefields around the world. The day before, we visited Uvalde, Texas. In front of Robb Elementary School, we stood before 21 crosses for 19 third and fourth graders and 2 teachers. On each cross, a name, and nearby, a photo of each victim that Jill and I reached out to touch. Innocent victims murdered in a classroom that have been turned into a killing field. Standing there in that small town, like so many other communities across America, I couldn't help but think there are too many other schools, too many other everyday places that have become killing fields, battlefields here in America. We stood at such a place just 12 days before, across from a grocery store in Buffalo, New York, memorializing 10 fellow Americans, a spouse, a parent, a grandparent, a sibling, gone forever. At both places, we spent hours with hundreds of family members who were broken, whose lives will never be the same. They had one message for all of us: do something. Just do something. For God's sake, do something. After Columbine, after Sandy Hook, after Charleston, after Orlando, after Las Vegas, after Parkland, nothing has been done. This time that can't be true. This time we must actually do something. The issue we face is one of conscience and common sense. For so many of you at home, I want to be very clear. This is not about taking away anyone's guns. It's not about vilifying gun owners. In fact, we believe we should be treating responsible gun owners as an example of how every gun owner should behave. I respect the culture and the tradition and the concerns of lawful gun owners. At the same time, the Second Amendment, like all other rights, is not absolute. It was Justice Scalia who wrote, and I quote, "Like most rights, the rights granted by the Second Amendment are not unlimited. Not unlimited. It never has been. There have always been limitations on what weapons you can own in America. For example, machine guns have been federally regulated for nearly 90 years, and this is still a free country. This isn't about taking away anyone's rights. It's about protecting children. It's about protecting families. It's about protecting whole communities. It's about protecting our freedom to go to school, to a grocery store, to a church, without being shot and killed. According to new data just released by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, guns are the #1 killer of children in the United States of America. The #1 killer. More than car accidents, more than cancer. Over the last 2 decades, more school-age children have died from guns than on-duty police officers and active-duty military combined. Think about that. More kids than on-duty cops killed by guns. More kids than soldiers killed by guns. For God's sake, how much more carnage are we willing to accept? How many more innocent American lives must be taken before we say enough, enough? I know that we can't prevent every tragedy. But here's what I believe we have to do. Here's what the overwhelming majority of American people believe we must do. Here's what the families in Buffalo and Uvalde in Texas told us we must do. We need to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. And if we can't ban assault weapons, then we should raise the age to purchase them from 18 to 21. Strengthen background checks. Enact safe storage law and red flag laws. Repeal the immunity that protects gun manufacturers from liability. Address the mental health crisis, deepening the trauma of gun violence and as a consequence of that violence. These are rational, common sense measures. Here's what it all means. It all means this. We should reinstate the assault weapons ban on high-capacity magazines that we passed in 1994 with bipartisan support in Congress and the support of law enforcement. 9 categories of semi-automatic weapons were included in that ban, like AK-47s and AR-15s. And in the 10 years it was law, mass shootings went down. But after Republicans let the law expire in 2004, and those weapons were allowed to be sold again, mass shootings tripled. Those are the facts. A few years ago, the family of the inventor of the AR-15 said he would have been horrified to know that its design was being used to slaughter children and other innocent lives instead of being used as a military weapon on the battlefield, as it was designed. That's what it was designed for. Enough. Enough. We should limit how many rounds a weapon can hold. Why, in God's name, should an ordinary citizen be able to purchase an assault weapon that holds 30-round magazines that let mass shooters fire hundreds of bullets in a matter of minutes? The damage is so devastating in Uvalde, parents had to do DNA swabs to identify the remains of their children. 9 and 10-year-old children. Enough. You should expand background checks to keep guns out of the hands of felons, fugitives, and those under restraining orders. Stronger background checks are something that the vast majority of Americans, including the majority of gun owners, agree on. I also believe we should have safe storage laws, personal liability for not locking up your gun. The shooter at Sandy Hook came from a home full of guns. They were too easy to access. That's how he got the weapons. The weapon he used to kill his mother and then murdered 26 people, including 20 first graders. You own a weapon. You have a responsibility to secure it. Every responsible gun owner agrees. To make sure no one else can have access to it. To lock it up. To have trigger locks. And if you don't, and something bad happens, you should be held responsible. We should also have national red flag laws, so that a parent, a teacher, a counselor can flag for a court that a child, a student, a patient is exhibiting violent tendencies, threatening classmates, or experiencing suicidal thoughts, makes them a danger to themselves or to others. 19 states in the District of Columbia have red flag laws. The Delaware law is named after my son, Attorney General Beau Biden. Fort Hood, Texas, 2009, 13 dead and more than 30 injured. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, 2018, 17 dead, 17 injured. In both places, countless others suffering with invisible wounds. Red flag laws could have stopped both these shooters. In Uvalde, the shooter was 17 when he asked his sister to buy him an assault weapon, knowing he'd be denied because he was too young to purchase one himself. She refused. But as soon as he turned 18, he purchased 2 assault weapons for himself. Because in Texas, you can be 18 years old and buy an assault weapon even though you can't buy a pistol in Texas until you're 21. We can't ban assault weapons as we should. We must at least raise the age to be able to purchase one to 21. Look, I know some folks will say 18-year-olds can serve in the military and fire those weapons. But that's with training and supervision by the best trained experts in the world. Don't tell me raising the age won't make a difference. Enough. We should repeal the liability shield that often protects gun manufacturers from being sued for the death and destruction caused by their weapons. They're the only industry in this country that has that kind of immunity. Imagine if the tobacco industry had been immune from being sued, where we'd be today. The gun industry's special protections are outrageous. It must end. And let there be no mistake about the psychological trauma that gun violence leaves behind. Imagine meeting that little girl, that brave little girl in Uvalde, who smeared blood off her murdered friend's body on her own face to lie still among the corpses in her classroom and pretend she was dead in order to stay alive. Imagine what it'd be like for her to walk down the hallway of any school again. Imagine what it's like for children who experience this kind of trauma every day in school, in the streets, and communities all across America. Imagine what it's like for so many parents to hug their children goodbye in the morning, not sure whether they'll come back home. Unfortunately, too many people don't have to imagine that at all. Even before the pandemic, young people were already hurting. There's a serious youth mental health crisis in this country. We have to do something about it. That's why mental health is the heart of my unity agenda that I laid out in the State of the Union address this year. We must provide more school counselors, more school nurses, more mental health services for students and for teachers, more people volunteering as mentors to help young people succeed, more privacy protection and resources to keep kids safe from the harms of social media. This unity agenda won't fully heal the wounded souls, but it will help. It matters. I just told you what I do. The question now is, what will the Congress do? The House of Representatives already passed key measures we need. Expanding background checks to cover nearly all gun sales, including at gun shows and online sales. Getting rid of a loophole that allows the gun sale to go through after 3 business days, even if the background check has not been completed. The House is planning even more action next week. Safe storage requirements, the banning of high-capacity magazines, raising the age to buy an assault weapon to 21, federal red flag law, codifying my ban on ghost guns that don't have serial numbers, that can't be traced, and tougher laws to prevent gun trafficking and straw purchases. This time, we have to take the time to do something. This time, it's time for the Senate to do something. But, as we know, in order to get anything done in the Senate, we need a minimum of 10 Republican senators. I support the bipartisan efforts that include a small group of Democrats and Republican senators trying to find a way. My God, the fact that the majority of the Senate Republicans don't want any of these proposals even to be debated or come up for a vote, I find unconscionable. We can't fail the American people again. Since Uvalde, just over a week ago, there have been 20 other mass shootings in America, each with 4 or more people killed or injured, including yesterday at a hospital in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A shooter who literally targeted a surgeon using an assault weapon he bought just a few hours before his rampage that left a surgeon, another doctor, a receptionist, and a patient dead and many more injured. That doesn't count the carnage we see every single day. It doesn't make the headlines. I've been in this fight for a long time. I know how hard it is, but I'll never give up. And if Congress fails, I believe this time a majority of the American people won't give up either. I believe the majority of you will act to turn your outrage into making this issue central to your vote. Enough, enough, enough. Over the next 17 days, the families in Uvalde will continue burying their dead. It won't take that long, in part because it's a town where everyone knows everyone. And day by day, they will honor each one they lost. Jill and I met with the owner and staff of the funeral home, who's being strong to take care of their own. And the people of Uvalde mourn as they do over the next 17 days. What will we be doing as a nation? Jill and I met with the sister of the teacher who was murdered, whose husband died of a heart attack 2 days later, leaving behind 4 beautiful orphan children, all now orphaned. The sister asked us, what could she say? What could she tell her nieces and nephews? The most heartbreaking moments that I can remember. All I could think to say was, I told her to hold them tight. Hold them tight. Because I visited school. We attended Mass at Sacred Heart Catholic Church with Father Eddie. In the pews, families and friends held each other tightly. As Archbishop Gustavo spoke, he asked the children in attendance to come up on the altar, sit on the altar with him as he spoke. There wasn't enough room, so Mom and her young son sat next to Jill and me in the first pew. And as we left the church, the grandmother who had just lost her granddaughter passed me a handwritten letter. It read, quote, "Erase the invisible line that is dividing our nation. Come up with a solution. Fix what's broken. Make the changes that are necessary to prevent this from happening again." End of quote. Fellow Americans, enough. Enough. It's time for each of us to do our part. It's time to act. The children we've lost, the children we can save, the nation we love. Let's hear the call and the cry. Let's meet the moment. Let us finally do something. God bless the families who are hurting. God bless you all. A hymn based on the 91st Psalm sung in my church. May He raise you up on eagle's wings and bear you on the breath of dawn. Make you to shine like the sun and hold you in the palm of His hand. That's my prayer for all of you. God bless you.
He is right. We do need to do something. We definitely need to do something, but doing something doesn't mean just doing anything. Doing something means doing something that works, but we do have to do something. Doing something doesn't mean closing our eyes and trusting somebody else to solve the problem. That's not doing something. That's doing nothing. And what people like Joseph Biden, what people like people in Congress, the Senate, are talking about is do something by just giving us more power. That's not doing something. That's doing nothing. That's closing our eyes, taking the easy route, and just hoping somebody else will magically make our problems going away. That's not doing something. We do need to do something. We need to start addressing the roots of these problems. That's not something a law can fix. That's not something just, oh, government save me. Government save us. That's not something just throwing our problems on the hands of somebody else can fix. That's not how the real world works. And if we've been paying attention, we've realized that's not how the real world has worked. But that's what we keep doing. I say we as a whole, as in the majority. The majority of us have continued to think that somehow there's some magical group of people that can just solve all of our problems, and that's not reality. Because even if they were the virtuous people that some of us seem to think they are, despite all evidence to the contrary, they're still people. They can't control the hearts and minds of millions of people around the country or around the world. Yes, we have to do something. People are broken. We need to acknowledge that. We need to recognize that, and we need to start addressing that. But I want to talk about some of the things he talked about. Took some notes of some key points he talked about. Common sense. They love using that word. Common sense, gun control. So many people support gun. What is common sense gun control? See, you can say those words, common sense gun control. You can say common sense legislation. You can say common sense restrictions. What does that mean? You know what it means? It means whatever they want it to mean. Because today it'll mean something. Tomorrow will mean something else. But go ahead. Tell them if common sense restrictions mean something. Tell them to make a law saying that they are allowed to put common sense restrictions on the Second Amendment. Common sense restrictions on gun ownership. Tell them to write it just like that. You know what will happen when it gets taken to court? It'll get thrown out. Do you know why it will be thrown out? It'll be thrown out because it is vague. It has no meaning. Common sense. What is common sense? What is a common sense restriction? Oh, well, we need to ban assault weapons. What's an assault weapon? Just talked to my mother yesterday, and she said, oh, it doesn't make any sense that 18-year-olds should have assault weapons. And before I get to the 18-year-old part, I said, Mom, what's an assault weapon? This is my mother. I love my mother. But I asked her, what is an assault weapon? Do you know what my mother told me? The weapons that just fire, you just The bullets just keep coming out. I said, no, Mom, that's an automatic weapon. That's not what an assault weapon is. Many people know that an assault weapon, that term assault weapon, is just absolutely made up. Absolutely made up. Absolutely fabricated out of thin air. A weapon is a weapon. A weapon is a weapon. The difference between an assault weapon and a weapon, it's nonsensical. The very distinction of assault weapon versus a weapon is a weapon. Weapons are capable of causing harm. Now the question is, who are you trying to harm and why? Are you trying to harm somebody who's trying to harm you? Okay. Are you trying to harm someone who's trying to harm someone else? Okay. Are you trying to harm innocent people? Not okay. But this is what I'm talking about. Because if you look at this issue, there has not been good faith. Just that very term, assault weapon, it has no meaning. Its only meaning is to deceive and manipulate. So you can't say we're going to have good faith discussions if you started in complete fraudulence, in complete fantasy, in making up words that have no actual meaning, and that only deceive people to think you're talking about one thing when you're talking about something else. Because I guarantee you, my mother is not the only person that thinks an assault weapon is an automatic weapon. Automatic weapons have already been banned. These automatic weapons are not being sold in gun stores. When they're talking about banning assault weapons, these are semi-automatic weapons they're talking about. Weapons, one pull, one bullet. These are weapons they're talking about. So what makes an assault weapon different from another weapon? It's a step. It's one more step closer to what their goal is. Because they're saying they're not trying to vilify gun owners. But I remember the speech Joe Biden gave last week, vilifying gun owners, vilifying the NRA. And I despise the NRA. Why? Because they're frauds. They don't actually care about people's rights. Like if your defense of the Second Amendment includes abolishing and infringing on the First Amendment, you're a scumbag. Like, you're a scumbag, Wayne LaPierre. Just you're a scumbag, Wayne LaPierre. I hate Wayne LaPierre. He's a piece of garbage. His call for a national database of mental is ridiculous. That's not due process. Wayne LaPierre is an absolute piece of garbage. But to vilify gun owners, to vilify anybody who's standing up for gun owners, that's what you've already done. To claim that every politician that's defending the Second Amendment is just beholden to gun owners. Not even beholden to the gun lobby. Ignoring the possibility that just like there are people who would feel safer without guns being around, there are people who feel safer with guns being around. There are people who feel safer because they own a gun. There are people who feel safer because they've been in situations where having a gun has enabled them to protect themselves and or their loved ones. Second Amendment is not absolute. Where's the limit? Where's the limit? Where are you putting the limit on how far you will go? Because if you're paying attention, they keep going further. Every time you let them take another step, that then becomes the baseline. And then, well, we've done this, so we might as well do this. Because right now, they're talking about raising the age. They're raising the age of long guns, so-called assault weapons. Remember, they already raised the age of pistols. Oh, it's ridiculous that you can own an assault weapon and not buy a handgun. Well, why was the age to buy handguns at 21 years old to begin with? But that became the new normal, and then they go further. Because that's what government does. That's what these pieces of garbage do. They take a step, and then they keep pushing. They are never, ever satisfied. Ask them. Okay, if you say the Second Amendment isn't absolute, where's the limit? Where is the limit? Where is the line drawn that you can't cross? There is no line because they keep going further. They will keep going further. And then it will be, oh, you can't own guns at 21. then it'll be 25. Oh, you can't own guns that have a certain capacity. You can't own magazines that have a certain capacity. Then it'll be certain amounts of ammo that you can possess, period. They will keep going further. Safe storage laws. I saw somebody talk about how they have 20 gauge shotgun and a 22 caliber rifle that they leave for their teenage children to have access to in case there's a wild animal outside they need to take care of. Clearly, they live in a rural area. Safe storage laws. Do they take that into consideration? What if somebody is intruding, breaking into the house, and that young person is in the house by themselves? Safe storage laws. Does that take that into consideration? There have been stories of young people who were able to fend off intruders with firearms in the home. Safe storage law. Is it just, oh well, you still have another kid, right? Is that the solution? Okay, so oh well, you lost a child. But I feel better. I feel safer. He talked about red flag laws, ignoring the fact that in so many of these cases, those laws were beyond triggered. Authorities were contacted. Authorities were called. People were like, listen, this person's dangerous. Authorities go, okay. What happens when the government fails? We've seen it happen time and time again. Marjory Stoneman, that school, how many levels of government failure there was? And their answer is just depend on the government? Are you serious? Uvalde? Just wait on the government? Are you out of your mind? And then he talks about mental health services. And see, this is what I'm talking about when I started. When I talked about doing something, yes, we do need to start working on our mental health. And not just people that are so severely psychotic and mentally ill. There's a lot of us that have issues. Most of us have issues. Most of us don't want to address our issues. And we need to start addressing those issues because it's not good for any of us. It goes beyond mental illness and goes into an area of mental wellness. Because even though there are a lot of us that don't qualify as mentally ill, I think majority of us do not qualify as mentally well. We need to change that because being mentally unwell tends to deteriorate, tends to go further down the line. And it makes us unable to help others who may need some help, some guidance, some support, some empathy. But it also makes those who are mentally ill or just morally ill, does make them less stable, does make them more dangerous. Believe me, the circumstances definitely have an effect on all of us. And there are some of us who are affected by our surroundings even more severely. And sometimes these people lash out. If we're not willing to do the work, because that takes work. That's not just, okay, I'll check a box in November and then somebody will come in office and magically all our problems will disappear. No, that's not how this works. That's not how the real world works. It takes looking in the mirror and realizing, you know what? I'm not being the best person I can be. I'm not being the best me I can be. I'm not treating other people with empathy. I'm not being rational. I'm playing these stupid team games in society are thinking it's red team versus blue team, and everybody on that team is evil, but my team is good. But this is the simple-minded stupidity which leaves us in a situation where people believe that they are justified in doing whatever they need to do against the other team. So you want to do something? Start by looking in the mirror. Start by dealing with your own irrationality. Start by looking at yourself and saying, wait a minute. What have I done to make the world a better place today? Thank you for checking out this episode. As always, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, like, share, subscribe. If you disagree with me, if you think, oh no, we need laws, go ahead and give me the thumbs down. And tell me why you think a group of corrupt scumbags in Washington, D.C. can solve the problems of the world that nobody else can. Let's change the world.